Hey guys, tonight we drift back in time to a deck that rolls beneath your feet, the air stinking of sweat, smoke, and dead fish. The wood under your palms is sticky with salt, and your ears ring from the endless crash of waves. The creak of ropes. Overhead feels like a lullaby twisted into a nightmare. You're not on a cruise, no? You've been pulled aboard one of the most miserable workplaces ever invented, a pirate ship. And here's the reality check you probably don't want. Truth is, you probably won't survive this life for long. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, drop a comment telling me where you're listening from and what time it is in your corner of the world. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The first thing you notice is the noise. A pirate deck at dawn isn't the romantic hush of seagulls fluttering across gold-tinted skies. It's buckets being sloshed, curses hurled from one sailor to another, boots smacking across planks, and somewhere in the mix, a rooster stolen from a coastal port screeching like it's mocking your misery. You sit up, and all around you are men whose faces already look years older than they are. Their skin is weather-beaten, burnt, peeling. They laugh too loud, fight too quick, and stink like they've forgotten the invention of soap, because in truth they practically have. This isn't just a ragtag carnival either. Pirate crews were often made up of desperate escapees. Ex-Navy soldiers sick of tight discipline, runaway slaves clinging to a dangerous chance at freedom, petty criminals, and the occasional romantic wanderer who believed the stories of treasure, and endless. What they all have in common is hunger. Hunger for silver, for escape, for anything that makes life feel less crushing than it did on land. And here you are, another dreamer turned deckhand. You probably thought treasure meant glittering coins heaped in barrels, jewels clinking in velvet sacks. But the hard fact? Most mornings look like this, swabbing the filthy boards caked in vomit, patching torn rigging at the edge of dizzying heights, or hauling a cannon across the deck while your back screams. Runaway excitement is traded quickly for backbreaking labor. Historians still argue whether pirate crews genuinely treated their men more equally than the standard Navy. But one thing's clear, your hands don't get a break, not when waves are strong and sails threaten to split at any moment. The captain isn't much of a savior either. Forget the idea of a charming, swaggering rogue with eyeliner. What you get is often a man scarred by blade fights, wearing clothes stiff as cardboard from layers of unwashed grime. Some captains were elected by their crew. Yes, pirates had their version of democracy, but displease him and you'll learn democracy comes with its own gallows humor. One wrong step could mean lashes. One word too loose could mean ending up overboard. Above you, sails flap like wounded birds, their edges ragged from salt and gunfire. The smell of tar fills your nose. It's everywhere, slathered on ropes and smeared on hull seams to fend off leaks. You watch a fellow crewman crouch down, rubbing tar onto a crack, muttering curses through the job. The stuff sticks to everything, hair, teeth, even fingernails. You'll carry black spots across your body long before any mythical curse does. And then there's the rot. Not all of it human, though you'll see plenty of those ruined teeth and pus-filled sores soon enough. Wooden ships are basically floating corpses for tiny creatures to feast on. Worms burrow inside beams, planks, sag with moisture and that crunching sound under your knees. Sometimes it isn't a loose nail. Sometimes it's something chewing the ship itself. A quirky tidbit here. Pirate crews sometimes shoved pieces of lead into cracks as makeshift patches, which worked well until cannonballs tore them right back out. Imagine trusting your life to wads of soft metal jammed into soggy wood. As you squint toward the horizon, there's no land, just blue upon blue and endless painting with no frame. It should feel majestic, freeing, except it's not. It's claustrophobic when you realize the only world you have now is this crowded deck with 40 groaning strangers who'll slit your throat if rum runs low. Remember that reality check? Here's the second dose. Life expectancy for a pirate wasn't measured in golden years, but in summer breezes. If storms, hunger, or disease didn't end you, the rope waiting in some coastal port probably would. Yet despite the misery, there's a strange hum underneath everything, a mood stubbornly glowing between broken men. someone singing a bawdy tune with half the words forgotten. Another is mending a torn hat as though patched cloth is a crown. They chuckle in between sneers, and you suspect they laugh harder because if they ever stop, the despair will be unbearable. Humor is stitched into pirate life like ripped seams constantly sewn back together. A crew joke goes around. Better to be hanged by the neck than nagged by the wife. You chuckle nervously, not sure whether to laugh or wince, and yet already the ocean seems to have claimed your heartbeat. The rocking has you swaying without realizing, and the sun's warmth, harsh as it is, feels like a blanket you can't kick off. Most days will blur like this. Hard work, foul smells, constant danger tugging at nerves. Most nights will offer little sleep, with sails snapping above like gunshots keeping you awake. Historians still argue whether men actually grew accustomed to the endless sea or whether the monotony gnawed at sanity until mutiny broke loose. As you drag a coiled rope across the board, something nips at your ankle. A rat, bold, black-eyed, with a tail that whips like a whipcord. Rats are the true kings here. They eat better than the crew, feasting on crumbs tucked beneath barrels. Forget the fear of sharks for now. It's the nibble of tiny teeth in the night that might wake you screaming louder than any sea monster. The day drags on, bright sun scorching your skin, but there's one relief. A gust whips by, filling the sails, and suddenly everyone perks up. Why? Because nothing excites a pirate more than the chance of a shadow on the horizon. A sail. A merchant ship fat with food or coin. You squint, hoping to see it, but today? Nothing but more of the same. You're stuck in this floating wooden prison, the horizon promising adventure that reality never delivers. Still, hold on tight. Hunger is coming, and hunger aboard a pirate ship is a punishment more merciless than any captain's whip. The food supplies on board are worse than you can imagine. Fresh fruits and vegetables vanish within days of sailing, leaving behind hardtack and unforgiving biscuit so stale it could break your teeth. It's infested with weevils and practically glued to the barrel walls. You bite into one and it tastes like dry cardboard dusted with old sawdust, only with the bonus crunch of insect skeletons. The salty sea air doesn't help either. It seeps into everything, turning whatever little food there is into a salty, tasteless mush. Salted meat replaces fresh catches after a few days. But this slammed-in salt doesn't preserve much. It just makes you thirsty all the time. You drink the sea sparingly. No one's mad enough to swallow salt water unless completely desperate. Even water barrels turn slimy, and are often a breeding ground for algae and creepy little bugs. The constant hunt for fresh water becomes a daily obsession, often ending in disappointment or arguments. Pirates didn't exactly build trust with their rations either. After a long voyage, the captain and officers would keep a better share, while the common crew got scraps. This was one of many reasons pirates eventually evolved their own codes of conduct and shares of loot, to avoid fights over food that could sink any ship faster than enemy fire. Still, your ration rarely feels fair, and the hunger gnaws louder every waking moment. Here's a quirky fact. Pirates often soaked their hardtack in water, coffee, or even rum to make it edible. Sometimes they boiled it to soften the edges, but that was a gamble because boiling water was a rare treasure too. You learn fast not to drool over biscuits soaked in brine because your stomach will rebel, and there's no doctor or pantry waiting for you. Meanwhile, your belly churns while crew chatter turns to moonlit tales of feasts back home. They exaggerate the bounty of landlocked feasts with fresh bread, salted ham, and steaming pies. Each story a dagger twisting through your starving soul. Hunger isn't just physical here, it's psychological torture. It heightens tempers, makes fingers twitch towards edged weapons, and warps your mind until every shadow looks like an enemy. It's rightly said, the longest journey a pirate ever took was from belly to brain, because hunger colors every thought with desperation and irrationality. Disease is your next cruel companion, often creeping in before hunger can finish you off. Sailors packed into tight, humid quarters breed sickness like mold on damp wood. You can't wash properly, your clothes are threadbare, and coughing wraps around the cramped space like a fog. Scurvy, caused by vitamin C deficiency, becomes widespread. Your gums bleed painfully, your skin bruises without cause, and mood swings bite like another unseen enemy. It was so common that some ships were nicknamed sea coffins. Unfortunately, the real cure, fresh citrus fruits, were almost impossible to store. Historians still argue whether pirates understood the cause of scurvy, or just relied on luck and superstition when fresh fruit was found. As if scurvy wasn't enough, lice, fleas, and rats carry diseases that you'd rather not ponder. Rats scamper through every nook, spreading fleas that bite and itch till you're raw. You scratch yourself in disbelief that survival sometimes means sacrificing dignity for relief. The medics or barber surgeons on board were often worse than the illnesses. They applied leeches, cut open swollen bodies, or slapped on poultices made from disgusting, unknown ingredients. You shiver to imagine their cures, often a brutal mix of torture and folk remedies more likely to kill than heal. The worst nights are those when fever burns through the crew, sweat soaking into the mattress of straw and old sails. You hear groans and whispered prayers and sometimes the sudden terrifying silence as another pirate succumbs. The dead aren't always buried at sea. Sometimes they're simply tossed overboard in a haste that feels more like punishment than respect. Yet despite all this decay and desperation, there's a grim camaraderie binding you to these men. They're your only family, your only lifeline in this endless ocean wilderness. The sea can be beautiful, yes, but here it's a relentless beast that spits you out bruised, hungry, and broken. The smell, the salt, the weight of endless sky and water overwhelm your senses until you forget which shore you even came from. This first brutal taste of pirate life sets the unyielding tone. It's a life of constant discomfort, cruelty, and shattered hope. You quickly realize the only treasure worth hoping for is the rare moment without pain or hunger, and even those are stolen by the merciless sea. Hunger is the silent enemy that never leaves your side. It gnaws just beneath your skin, whispers cruel reminders in the back of your mind, and sharpens every sound, smell, and shadow into a tormenting puzzle of survival. You reach for what is supposed to be your daily ration, a piece of hardtack also grimly known as ship's biscuit. It's a slab of baked dough so unforgiving it almost doubles as kindling. Baked to last months or even years, it's meant to sustain, but you sometimes wonder if the whole point is to starve the pirate slowly, while keeping him just alive enough to endure. You bite into the biscuit and immediately hate your choice. It screams dryness, tasting like concrete dust with the occasional crunch of weevils, tiny beetles that have made these rations their kingdom. Eating those little critters becomes a weird habit, a grim source of protein that your mind tries to convince you is a delicacy. Beginners choke and gag. Veterans say you just get used to it. A shadow of a joke travels around. If the bugs don't kill you, the thirst will. You allow yourself the smallest smile, weak as it is because humor is one of the last sacred things on board. The food on a pirate ship shapes every waking moment. Fresh fruits and vegetables rot away within days of loading and disappear within the first fortnight, leaving behind a landscape of spoiled, salted meats and dried beans. The salty air seeps deep into everything. The water stashes slosh with algae and tiny crawlies, chronicling the slow decay of supplies. No matter how much you gulp, the constant salt turns every swallow into a task of willpower. You drink what you can, knowing the sea itself is a poison you dare not taste. You're not alone in your misery. The cook's calloused hands splash, buckets of brackish water over rusted barrels, muttering curses as he guards the meager stores with an almost religious zeal. You watch him ration the ship's biscuits unequally. Officers get thicker slices, the men fight over crumbs. The ship's galley is a battlefield where knives flash over stolen spoons, and the quietest whispers betray deepest fears of starvation. It's a tense negotiation where favor saved today might mean survival tomorrow. The smell is almost worse than the actual hunger. Rancid meat, sour vegetables, and the inevitable mold blend in a thick cloud that settles in your nostrils. It's so constant you begin to taste it every breath you take, and your stomach flips even when there's no food in sight. It's a nausea of the mind as much as the body, breaking spirits as well as bones. Here's a strange and unsettling fact. Legends tell of pirates forced into cannibalism during shipwrecks or starvation-fueled mutinies, whether true or just sailors' dark humor. Historians still argue if desperate crews really resorted to such horrors, but the rumors alone add to the chilling weight you carry. The very thought turns your skin cold and adds a punch of dread to the dread already lingering in every creak of the ship. When fortune smiles, it's usually through a raid gone right. A merchant ship laden with flour, fresh meat, barrels of wine, or bales of cloth promises relief and a brief reprieve from desperation. The deck buzzes with energy when plunder spreads out, a luscious feast compared to the usual despair. Men dig into stolen provisions with wild greed, and for a moment the blackened eyes of hunger soften. But the spoils are never enough for all, and the old grudges flare as quickly as the rum flows. Some pirate pockets swell while others remain painfully empty, the sharp sting of inequality a bitter aftertaste to success, and rum, oh the rum, the sour-sweet nectar of the pirate's existence. It flows freely and recklessly, the ship's lifeblood in liquid form. It wards off the cold nights, dulls agonies too sharp to bear, and fuels the kind of laughter that borders on madness. You witness rowdy brawls sparked by spilled rum, a blur of fists, teeth, and curses as men battle over the last drops. Yet it's also a balm, a stolen kiss of joy amid misery. If you're lucky, a flashing, fiery gulp cuts through the rough days and brings a stupid grin, if only for a moment that feels like freedom. However, the very thing that sustains also destroys. Drinking blurs visions and dulls caution, and fights at sea aren't just dangerous because of weapons or storms. They come from drunken tempers boiling over in close quarters. You learn that every splash of rum has a shadow lurking just behind it. The broken bones, the bloodied noses, the shouted threats that echo deep into the night. Humor and violence dance a fine line on these decks, and you're never quite sure which will take you first. The maw of hunger twists the mind just as sharply. Desperation makes men act in ways you wouldn't believe. Quiet plotting in shadowy corners, silent steals, bitter accusations. Paranoia creeps in, claws sharp as knives. Historians argue if pirate codes were truly democratic or if they were more effective survival tools, designed to keep hunger-driven chaos at bay. But one thing is clear. Trust is a fragile treasure aboard these ships, more precious than silver and harder to hold. You find yourself learning how to survive not just with your hands, but with your head. Makeshift trades blossom in the dim light. Favor for a biscuit, a story for a swig of rum. Companionship is currency, a shared secret is protection. You watch older pirates, their faces maps of scars and lost hope, navigating this chaos with eerie calm. They speak quietly of past battles, lost loves, and missed chances, and you wonder how much of their stories are true, and how much just survival myths crafted to comfort broken souls. Your thoughts sometimes drift to the ports you left behind. The smell of fresh bread baking, markets bursting with colors and smells, laughter spilling from taverns full of promise. Those memories sting, bittersweet and cruel, reminders of a world that now feels alien. You desperately clutch at the hope of reaching such places again, though you know too well that few pirate lives end in peaceful harbors. Disease prowls just behind starvation. Every breath you take is weighted with unseen threats. The cramped spaces below decks give birth to sickness, scurvy, dysentery, typhus. Your skin itches with lice that leap eagerly onto fresh skin, each bite a tiny agony. You scratch until you bleed, but the bugs don't care. Rats, those filthy emperors of the hold, spread plague with twitching tails and tiny teeth that gnaw through every hiding spot. Scurvy, the bane of the sea, tightens its grip slowly but surely. Your gums bleed, joints seize up, and your energy drains like the fading light of an Edo sunset. Without fresh fruit or vegetables, the disease is a near certainty on long voyages. Some pirate captains tried carrying lemons or oranges, but the fragile cargo often spoiled before the journey ended. You wonder if the old sailors' superstitions about remedies, like carrying copper coins or drinking vinegar tonics, helped, or just wasted precious resources. Historians still debate the extent to which pirates understood scurvy's cause. Medical care is as bleak as the rest of pirate life. Barber surgeons wield blades sharper than their skills, slicing open wounds, or applying leeches with little concern for pain or infection. Poultices made from strange mixtures of herbs, dung, and worse are slapped onto soldiers in agony, often hastening death rather than preventing it. The sick sometimes become burdens, locked away or tossed overboard to preserve the ship's safety. You hear whispered rumors, a chilling mix of fact and fear, about hangings and maroonings disguised as medical decisions. Nights are the worst. You lie awake in cramped hammocks or on straw-stuffed sacks, the sound of crashing waves and creaking timbers mixing with the coughing and moaning of the sick. Darkness offers no comfort, only the cold, the damp, and the knowledge that with dawn may come another day of torture disguised as living. Occasionally, a pirate's death is met with a sudden silence, a pause that speaks louder than words, before the crew forces themselves back to grim routine. Yet, amidst the decay, a strange sort of order emerges. Bonds form in the shared struggle, a loose kind of brotherhood knit from desperation and fleeting joys. You smile again as tales and songs break the heavy silence, crude humor that masks raw grief, bawdy shanties that swing with the rhythm of the waves, stories passed down in slurred voices about impossible victories, lost treasures, and distant homes. This fragile tapestry of life and death keeps the crew tethered to whatever shreds of hope remain. Still, the sea remains indifferent, vast, and relentless. The wooden skeleton beneath your feet is both prison and home, constantly rotting and creaking as unseen creatures gnaw its insides. Every day is a gamble. Will the ship hold? Will the crew survive? Will the food last? The ocean doesn't care about your dreams or your fears. It only demands one thing: endurance. So here you are, young pirate, in a world as hard and unforgiving as the ocean itself. You learn fast that survival isn't about glory or treasure. It's about fighting off hunger and disease one agonizing day at a time, and hoping that each new sunrise doesn't bring your last. Disease is the ghost gripping every timber, every breath aboard the pirate ship. You awaken to sweat-streaked sheets, your chest rattling with coughs sharp and cruel, as sickness creeps unseen between the men packed in this wooden prison. The air below decks is stale, thick with the odors of sweat, salt, and rot, the perfect breeding ground for illnesses that sap strength and shatter hope. Your world is nothing but cramped quarters, 40 sailors pressed shoulder to shoulder, sharing. Scant and filthy air that carries whispered prayers, muted groans, and the constant scratching of skin too bitten to find relief. You lie on straw-stuffed sacks, rough and damp, smelling of sickness and despair. Rats, those midnight thieves, dart and scuttle, their beady eyes glowing in the dim light as they claim every nook as their domain. Fleas and lice are relentless. Tormentors, their bites setting your skin aflame with terrible itching that no amount of scratching can soothe. The sound of claws on flesh mixes with the coughs of the sick, a grim symphony of slow decay. The doctor on board, a barber surgeon, does little to ease your suffering. These men double as barbers and medics, wielding razors that cut more than hair, performing surgeries and bloodletting with the same cold hand. Bloodletting, a practice of draining bad blood through intentional cuts, is one of their favored treatments alongside leech therapy, where slimy leeches latch onto raw, swollen flesh, sucking life as much as illness. Poultices made from strange ingredients, herbs, fish guts, even crocodile dung, are rubbed onto wounds believed to ward off infection but often worsening conditions. You shudder at the sight of these remedies, their horror matched only by the desperation driving men to accept them. Among the afflictions, scurvy reigns supreme in cruelty. It's not a sudden death but a slow, relentless strangler. Vitamin C's absence brings bleeding gums, loose or missing teeth, swollen, twisted joints, and bruises blossoming like dark flowers on skin. Weakness seeps into your bones, draining the will to fight as your body betrays you piece by piece. Entire crews were dubbed scurvy dogs or rotting wave for the curse that seemed to chew through men faster than any cannonball. You see those too weak to stand, barely clinging to life as comrades carry them for brief breaths of fresh air, only to have the ocean claim them hours later. Pirates sometimes smuggled aboard lemons or limes in a desperate hope to stave off this killer but fresh produce rotted in the heat of long voyages. Whether they fully understood scurvy's cause is a topic still debated by historians. Some blamed bad air, others spirits of the sea, while a few suspected the lack of fresh food. Whether by knowledge or superstition, whatever they could get, their hands-on was consumed like a treasure itself. Disease's long arm stretches beyond scurvy. Typhus, dysentery, and fevers race through the ship with terrifying efficiency. You know that the ship's toilets, or wooden holes in the deck, offer little hygiene. Dirty floors, contaminated water barrels teeming with worms and algae, and humid close quarters transform the ship into a floating cesspit. You choke down foul water, knowing thirst's grip is merciless even when the water tastes like death itself. The fever comes in waves, shaking your frame until the sweat runs cold. Lying in that cramped, mildew-stained hold, you hear the groans. In the dark, men fighting battles too harsh for their bodies. Whispers and prayers float on the stale air, punctuated by the sudden hollow silence when another soul gives in. When a pirate dies, they're often not granted a formal burial. Instead, bodies are hurriedly pitched overboard, sucked into the indifferent sea in a grim ceremony that reminds everyone of mortality's cold grip. Quarantine? Ridiculous. There's no room below decks to separate the infected, no medicines to fend off plague or fever. You lie, cough, itch, and pray the sickness somehow passes you by. It doesn't. The disease spreads like wildfire, relentless and merciless. Then there are the lice. Small beyond imagining, but fierce in their torment. They torment you relentlessly. By day and night, their bites burn your skin raw. You claw your flesh until blood flows, yet the pests persist, clinging on like relentless little parasites. Some pirates desperately shave their heads or burn their clothing, hoping to starve the insects, but lice are stubborn and cunning. In the midst of this agony, some pirate crews wrestled with superstition. Many believed cutting their hair or nails could ward off evil spirits thought to bring sickness. These rituals, puzzling to modern eyes, blend myth and medicine in ways historians still debate. Desperate men clutch whatever hope, however strange, they can find amid endless misery. Dark. Humor and camaraderie are also crucial survival tools. Through the coughs and hacking, pirates spin tales of ghost ships, cursed gold, and monstrous sea creatures. These stories, exaggerated and bawdy, are shards of light amid creeping despair, a balm to battered spirits. Yet disease steals more than bodies. You see laughter turn to silence, bright eyes dull to glass. Mental shrapnel flies, and those once lively grow withdrawn and haunted. Historians still argue if mental health awareness existed aboard ships, but the brutality of pirate life shattered many minds and souls. Survival through disease is only a prelude to hardship. Thin, scarred, trembling pirates face injury, storms, and fights with frail bodies and fraying nerves. You count the cost on bruised skin, shaky hands, and haunted faces, a living ledger of suffering. Yet, day after day, pirates endure. Their ragged breaths and broken bodies defy the sea's cruel designs. You are part of this ragtag brotherhood, clinging to life in a drifting hell of wood, sweat, and salt. When dawn blushes over endless ocean waves, you wonder how long this hell will last. Still, one thing is certain. Aboard these ships, disease kills as surely and silently as any cannonball, and often far more mercilessly. Despite the relentless assault, life aboard a pirate ship required a resilience that was almost unnatural. You discover quickly that survival meant more than just fighting off disease. It meant embracing every moment of fleeting joy and human connection, however small or twisted they might be. Amidst ragged breaths and aching limbs, laughter sometimes flares. A crude, desperate kind of humor born in the suffocating grip of misery. You hear bawdy jokes shouted above coughing fits, and songs tangled with the lingering bitterness of loss. Pirate camaraderie is a dangerous thing, though. Bonds form over shared hardship and battle, but hunger and sickness fray nerves and sharpen claws. Trust is a rare currency. You learn to read sideways glances, half smiles that hide knives, the anxious twitch of hands near belt pouches. Every man is a potential foe or ally, and choosing sides is a gamble as deadly as any duel. Your own body is a war zone. You wake to aches that no amount of salt water or rum soothes. You clutch bruised ribs, ache to move yet fear every step. Thrashing storms and pitched battles come on fast, testing your battered frame as if daring you to quit. The line between bravery and madness blurs. You learn to smile at pain because it means you're still alive. Survival is a mental game as much as physical. Shadows in the corners of your vision turn into monsters. Suddenly, the creak of the ship is a threatening whisper, and every splash against the hull is a warning from the deep. You wonder how long your sanity will hold, as isolation from the world twists reality like a warped lens. Historians still debate how pirates coped mentally with endless sea isolation, the boredom punctured by terror and violence. But it's clear many fought ghosts far fiercer than any naval enemy. You observe the strange rituals that cling to pirate life. Before battle, men might touch a cherished trinket, a silver coin, a worn locket, a carved wooden charm, believing it would protect them. Superstitions abound as a fragile shield against chaos. You begin to see how myth helps bridge the yawning gap between hope and despair. Sometimes there's a moment of surreal beauty, a sunset slipping over endless blue, casting gold across tattered sails, or the calm lull when waves whisper secrets to the hull. These moments feel like distant dreams, snatched from a life you may never have outside the ocean's sway. You drink them in, storing tiny pockets of peace that might sustain you when the storms return. But then hunger gnaws again, sickness creeps closer, and the dance of death resumes. The pirate's life, harsh and unforgiving, has you in its grip. You learn that survival is less about escape and more about withstanding, bearing the weight of the sea and disease with whatever broken resilience you can muster. This is the cruel rhythm of pirate life, hardship folded into every breath, danger lurking in each smile, and the constant tension between hope and hopelessness. You understand why legends often gloss over this brutal truth, preferring tales of glory and gold. The real story is darker, messier, and far more human. The sharp crack of a whip blows through the salty sea air like a warning siren, slicing through the everyday chaos of pirate life. You flinch and glance toward the sound, watching as a man is dragged to the foredeck, his back bare and gleaming, with sweat under the blazing sun. The captain holds the whip with cold precision, ready to deliver lashes that will carve agony and obedience into flesh alike. This isn't a playful show or ritual. It's ruthlessly efficient discipline, designed to keep the fragile order aboard a ship brimming with desperate men close to breaking point. Contrary to popular myth, pirate life wasn't an endless party of rum and treasure. Behind the swagger and loud laughter lies a brutal regime of control enforced through fear and pain. Punishment aboard a pirate ship often involved flogging, lashes raked hot across backs raw with sun and salt. You hear the whip's terrifying snap, mixed with the groans and gasps of the punished, their bodies trembling on the deck slick with blood and seawater. The crew stands silent, stoic, or worse, eager with a grim understanding that rebellion isn't tolerated. Some crimes bring even darker fates. Marooning, the act of abandoning someone on a deserted island or rocky shore, haunts the nightmares of pirates who step too far out of line. Imagine the horror of being left alone with the sun beating down, rancid water scarce, and wild animals prowling nearby. One step away from the ship is a slow, painful death guaranteed by dehydration, starvation, or savage beast. You hear whispered legends of men forced to survive on nothing but hope and whatever scraps they can scavenge, yet many never make it. History whispers this punishment was cruelly common, wielded not just to punish but to terrify. The infamous walking of the plank, often glazed in legend and glamour, is real but rarer than stories tell. You see a convicted pirate shuffled toward a makeshift wooden extension jutting from the ship's side. The crowd jeers as the condemned walks the narrow plank, the sea yawning beneath. The moment the last foot leaves solid wood, a splash silences the jeers forever. It's a chilling reminder of the razor-thin line between survival and oblivion. Yet, discipline isn't merely cruelty for cruelty's sake. On a vessel full of criminals, deserters, and dreamers, it's a grim necessity. Pirates had codes, rules, governing loot, conduct, and disputes, often surprisingly strict compared to Navy regulations. These codes kept skeleton crews from tearing themselves apart. Punishments enforced order, and breaking the code meant swift, often deadly consequence. You watch the captain navigating this precarious balance, a leader elected or accepted by his crew, wielding power that could just as easily end in mutiny. His threat isn't just the whip, it's the knife hidden in a pocket, the cold stare that warns you to fall in line. Unlike rigid naval hierarchy, pirate democracy offered voice, but demanded loyalty expressed through obedience. Crossing the line invited violence, swift and merciless. Punishments extended beyond physical agony. Public humiliation, salt deprivation, and forced labor wore down men's spirits. You see prisoners shackled, left exposed to sun, rain, and ridicule, their dignity shredded long before their bodies fail. The harshness wasn't just about discipline. It was about survival in a hostile world where weakness invited death. Yet humor, thin and sharp, slices through the grim reality. Cracked voices joke about the captain's gentle affection, the ship's barber's expert blades, and the rough but honest justice of sea law. These biting jests soften the blow of fear and pain, a subtle rebellion that keeps bones and spirits from fracturing. You also glimpse cruelty's other face, how pirates treated prisoners. Captured sailors and merchants sometimes faced torture, harsh captivity, or cold-blooded murder. You watch deals brokered for ransom or alliances shift as captives become bargaining chips. The captain's gaze calculates quickly, weighing profit against mercy with a heart hardened by necessity. The whip, the plank, the chains, all tools forged in survival's cruel crucible. Pirates lived on edges sharp enough to sever flesh and trust alike. Discipline was a game with stakes higher than gold, where order often meant difference between life and violent death. Mercy was a luxury, often absent in this lawless kingdom of despair. Historians argue fiercely about pirate codes, whether they were more just and democratic than Navy laws or simply brutal control, masquerading as fairness. The truth slides somewhere between. But one fact remains undeniable. Aboard pirate ships, violence ruled and survival meant walking a tightrope over a sea of danger and despair. And beneath the lash and threats, you feel a fragile thread of hope, hope tuned to weather every storm, every lash, every chaos crashing like waves against the battered ship. A hope that tomorrow might still be yours. Night descends with a heavy sigh, wrapping the pirate ship in a cold, suffocating blanket of darkness. You lie awake, muscles aching, eyes scanning the shadowed rigging and darkened sails above, as the storm clouds gather like silent predators. The wind picks up, a mournful howl tearing across the deck, signaling the start of a long, terrifying wait. The sea, once a steady companion, becomes a hostile beast, roaring and thrashing as waves tower like cliffs around you. Sleep is a stranger. You are cast adrift in a world pulsing with dread. The slap of rain against wooden planks, the unforgiving slap of waves against the hull, and the scream of the wind slicing through rigging. You try to find purchase on the slippery deck, your soaked clothes heavy and clinging, but the world tilts violently beneath your feet. The storm won't just test your skill. It might claim your life. You grip the nearest rope like a lifeline. The screaming crew works frantically, feet slipping and hands sliding over cold, soaking wood. The captain barks orders that sink beneath. The noise, but the urgency is clear. Reef the sails, secure the cargo. Tighten every line lest the ship rip apart. Every muscle strains against the violent heave of sea and sky. The smell of salt and fear blends into a bitter haze as lightning splits the sky, illuminating frantic faces drawn tight with terror. Storms like these are more than a weather event. They're a battle between man and the ocean's raw fury. You feel the ship shudder under your feet as waves crash like giants' fists, threatening to smash the fragile wooden frame into splinters. The crew's shouts are lost beneath the thunder's roar, each crashing wave threatening to wash you overboard into the abyss. Losing footing means death, or worse, the endless cold embrace of the sea, snakes and sharks waiting just below. Despite the chaos, you sense the quiet heroism in the crew's desperate efforts. Men lash themselves to masts, tie down equipment, and scream warnings driven by survival instinct and grim solidarity. You weave through slippery decks, heart-hammering, dodging snapping ropes and flying debris. The ship's timbers creak and groan as if alive, protesting against the punishing storm. These sea tempests are not just physical trials, but mental crucibles. The endless darkness presses in, nightmares bleeding into waking moments. You recall stories told in firelit taverns about sailors lost to madness in storms, driven insane by isolation and terror. Historians still debate how much of that mental fracturing was real, but the fear is unmistakable, a constant gnawing presence fueling every glance over a shoulder and every whispered prayer. The storm's cruelty is measured not only by its force, but by its timing. You remember how a ship's repair, barely completed days ago under blistering sun, now threatens to unravel as saltwater floods decks and weapons. Every bolt, every rope, every patch is tested beyond breaking, reminding you that the ocean's grace is fleeting. Those who fall during storms don't always vanish quietly. You recall a reckless pirate standing too close to the rail, swept away by a wave strong enough to swallow him whole. His scream is carried away by the wind, a haunting echo on the water's roar. No burial, no farewell, just a final plunge into cold, merciless depths. The next morning reveals the storm's toll. A deck littered with broken gear, tattered sails, and exhausted men. Some faces bear bruises and cuts, others are paler, eyes glassy from sleepless fear. Yet despite every wound, you feel a pulse of grim pride among survivors. The sea has tested them and they still breathe. There is a deep, unspoken respect among the crew for those who face such fury and live. Stories of surviving storms grow into legends, shared in cough-racked voices over the low glow of lanterns. These tales are badges of honor in a life otherwise marked by hardship and loss. Storms have shaped pirate life as much as battles and betrayals. You understand now that the sea's fury is as much an enemy as any navy or rival crew. It is an ever-present reminder of nature's overwhelming power, a constant gamble between survival and oblivion. The endless battle against weather crystallizes one bitter truth. Aboard these ships, every day is a fight not just against man, but against a wild, indifferent world. And sometimes no amount of skill or strength can save you from the sea's cold embrace. Chaos explodes as the pirate crew launches an attack on a merchant ship, the horizon suddenly alive with the flash of cannon fire and musket smoke. You stand bracing yourself, heart pounding, hands trembling on the worn wood of the rail. The rush of adrenaline is overwhelming, but so is the thunderous roar of cannonballs exploding around you, splintering wood and hurling shards like deadly hail. The battle descends into a swirling storm of noise, pain, and desperate survival instinct. Pirate. Attacks could be swift and brutal or slow, agonizing sieges. The gunpowder smell is thick, mingling with blood and salt spray. Your ears ring as muskets misfire. Clumsy hands struggle with cannons and explosions backfire, sending flames licking dangerously close to rigging and sail. You taste the acrid stench of burning pitch and gunpowder in your throat. Amid the smoke, faces twist with fear, fury, or wild excitement. The sea churns beneath the violence, waves tossing the ships like toys as the two vessels grapple. Shouting orders is nearly impossible. You dodge flying debris and swing through rigging, muscles straining against the chaotic violence. The sharp crack of swords striking shields and flesh sounds above the cries and cannon blasts. The fight isn't just about treasure. It's a dance between life and death, fury and calculation. You know every move could be your last. The chaos is often punctuated by terrible mistakes. Cannons backfire or explode prematurely, killing some of your own men. Muskets jam or miss their mark, wasting precious shots. You glimpse a captain shouting frantic orders, his face bloodied but determined. Battles regularly descended into messy brawls on the decks, swords clashing in a frenzy, pirates and merchant sailors tangled in deadly embrace. Successful raids bring spoils, food, weapons, gold coins. But the victories are rare and costly. You hear whispered tales of raids gone, wrong where entire crews were wiped out, ships sunk beneath waves and dreams drowned in blood. The unpredictability of battle is a cruel twist on the already perilous sea life. Historians still debate the strategies pirates used in these engagements, whether they favored brute force, cunning deception, or swift boarding tactics, but all agree the risks were monumental. The noise is overwhelming, explosion after explosion, crew cries, and the relentless pounding of waves. There's no time to grieve fallen mates or worry about tomorrow's survival. Every second you fight for breath, for footing, for life. The chaos thrills and terrifies you in equal measure, an intoxicating blend of hope and despair. Amid the violence, some crew members excel. You see skilled marksmen picking off officers, cannon crews working with brutal efficiency, and ruthless fighters cutting paths through enemy lines. These moments of triumph are sharp and brief, fleeting sparks in a storm of destruction. Yet, the worst is often the aftermath. Even the victorious pirate crew scrambles to salvage what treasure or food they can, tending to wounded men as best they can. The deck becomes a chaotic mess of blood, broken timber, and twisted metal. You stumble over bodies, friends and foes alike, struggling to breathe or moaning in pain. The victory is bittersweet, a fleeting success in a journey marked by pain and loss. As the smoke thickens and the groans of the wounded fill the air, the true price of piracy becomes unmistakable. You witness men, once fierce and bold, now pale and silent, clutching wounds that might never heal. Medical help is primitive at best. Barber surgeons armed with razors and leeches do what they can, but infection and disease eat away at flesh, faster than healing can begin. The cries of pain are sharp reminders that survival often means carrying scars, some visible, some buried deep inside. The promise of treasure is a siren song that quickly turns sour. Loot is seldom the glittering pile of gold coins you imagined. More often it's a mix of worthless trinkets, rotten food, damaged cargo, and maybe a few coins. Even after a successful raid, many pirates find themselves empty-handed or burdened only by stolen goods that bring poor returns. You realize the harsh truth. Few pirates ever strike it rich, and most die chasing a dream that slips further away with every battle. You notice tension among your crew growing sharper as greed gnaws at loyalty. The division of loot is hotly contested, with disputes sometimes exploding into violence. The pirate code dictates shares, but human nature bends rules in the heat of victory. You watch old friendships fracture, alliances crumble, and the fragile brotherhood weaken with each promise broken or treasure pocketed. Chaos often lurks not just on battlefields, but in the quiet moments, when exhausted men brood over losses and weigh betrayals. Mutiny simmers just beneath the surface, fueled by frustration and desperation. Your trusted shipmates can turn into enemies overnight, their eyes cold with calculation. The fear of betrayal becomes another weight on your already battered spirit. The sea, the ever-present spectator to human folly, offers neither justice nor mercy. It rolls on indifferent, swallowing treasures and bones alike. The life you lead teeters on the edge of ruin and riches, hope and despair. The battle may be won, but the greater fight, the fight for survival, trust, and meaning aboard this cursed vessel, endures long afterward. And yet in the heart of madness, you find moments of fierce joy. The roar of victory cheers, the clutch of gold coins cold in your hands, and the brotherly grins exchanged over shared hardship. These flashes of light keep the dark at bay, a reminder that even in the worst chaos, life pulses stubbornly on. Historians still argue about the reality versus myth of pirate raids. Did pirates operate with cunning strategies or brutal, chaotic force? The truth probably swings between both extremes, strategic enough to win, but wild enough to survive in a world without rules. Your personal experience, soaked in sweat and sprayed by salt water, paints a complicated picture of courage, madness, and survival. Despite the violence and chaos, pirates follow an unspoken rule. The crew's survival is the ultimate prize. You learn to read the subtle cues, the quick glance, the whispered encouragement, the helping hand beneath heavy loads. These small acts sustain you as much as bread or water. Trust, fragile and fleeting, is the foundation that holds the crew together through carnage. Sometimes bruised hands clutch at stolen treasures in moments of quiet triumph. You savor the weight of a gold coin, the cold gleam of silver, the promise of a future beyond the sea's endless horizon. These moments of joy fuel determination, pushing you through exhaustion and fear. You realize wealth isn't just coin, but the fleeting taste of freedom, the hope of a new life beyond the waves. Yet treasure isn't just gold. Weapons, foodstuffs, medical supplies, these are treasures of equal or greater value aboard the ship. You watch the crew scramble to secure barrels of fresh water or sacks of flour salvaged from enemy decks, knowing such loot prolongs survival more surely than shiny coins. Pirates live in a world where victory means more than riches. It means the chance to breathe another day. Glory, reputation, and fear also serve as currency. Word of daring raids, narrow escapes, and unmatched brutality circulates in whispers and shouts at ports far and wide. Every successful attack builds a legend that can protect you by fear or allure. You sense how creating a name, a reputation, as fierce or cunning, is sometimes the best weapon a pirate wields. Yet luck is a fickle companion. You hear stories from older sailors of ships sunk moments after capturing treasure or of crews lost to storms immediately following a raid. The sea takes its toll indiscriminately, and the wolfish grin of fortune can vanish as quickly as it comes. You come to understand that piracy is less about certainty than boldness in uncertainty, a desperate gamble against fate itself. There is no gentle pathway to freedom here, only rough roads carved by blood, sweat, and shattered dreams. You watch, the faces of your companions marked not just by scars but by a hunger beyond food, a hunger for meaning, safety, or redemption. For most, the piracy dream ends in ruin or oblivion. Few escape to live peacefully once the sea has claimed their youth and spirit. Even as the battle's echoes fade, you carry the heavy weight of what it cost. Every victory is bittersweet and fraught with loss, a reminder that pirates are prisoners of their own violent world. The promise of adventure and treasure is shadowed by endless danger, betrayal, and death. As you survey the battered deck once more, you know the fight is never truly over. The sea demands relentless hunger, endless courage, and a willingness to confront chaos every day. And so you prepare for what comes next, the uncertain horizon, the endless vigil, and the relentless pursuit of survival. Captured prisoners aboard a pirate ship are not just numbers or bargaining chips. They are living symbols of power and vulnerability, embodying the endless tension between mercy and brutality that defines pirate life. You watch as they are shackled, with cruel iron cuffs, the cold biting into wrists and ankles as if to remind them that hope is a distant luxury here. Every clink of chains is a harsh melody echoing the fragility of human dignity drifting at sea. The air around them is thick with fear, desperation dripping from eyes sunken with hunger and torment. Their clothes hang ragged, smeared with grime and sweat, the scent clinging like a ghost that refuses to leave. You hear whispered horror stories among the crew, tales of captives left to rot in dark holds, forgotten so long they fade into shadows, starved to near death by neglect or cruelty. Some prisoners are forced into backbreaking labor, slaves to the ship's endless demands, chained to oars or tasked with hauling heavy cargo under the merciless sun. The scars of these labors run deep, both on flesh and spirit. Others find themselves subjected to psychological tortures, mock executions, solitary confinement, or whispered threats designed to break not just bodies but minds. The pirate ship, you learn, is a prison without walls but with punishments just as unforgiving. Yet pirates are not monsters without reason. The treatment of captives is governed by a harsh, often contradictory code. Valuable prisoners, those from wealthy merchants or influential families, become assets worth protecting for ransom. You glimpse prisoners receiving scant food and basic care not out of kindness, but cold calculation to ensure profit. Rumors circulate that pirates sometimes treated valuable captives with respect, even allowing limited freedom aboard ship, a subtle trade-off to maintain negotiation leverage and prevent mutiny among uneasy crews. These contradictions make the pirate life a complex dance of survival and greed. Cruelty and compassion, brutality and strategy exist side by side on every deck. While some captives suffer torture or death, Others live as pawns in a perilous game where ransom coins often determine fate. You realize the difference between captors and captives is at best one of luck, circumstance, and timing. The delicate balance between cruelty and pragmatism reveals itself clearly when captains gather to make decisions about prisoners. You see the captain pacing, his gaze sharp beneath a weathered brow as he weighs the value of lives aboard his ship. Each prisoner is a coin, a risk, or a liability. His choice is swift, unbending, and final. Some captives might fetch a handsome ransom, lightening the burdens of future voyages, while others are too weak or dangerous, their continued presence threatening mutiny or slowing the ship. You observe grim dealings where prisoners are bartered like goods in port taverns, exchanged for weapons, safe passage, or information. You hear whispers of brutal interrogations, sometimes bordering on torture, wielded to extract secrets, locate hidden treasures, or turn prisoners into spies against their own crews. The pirate world's watchword is survival at any cost, and you'd be wise never to forget it. The captain's cold calculus occasionally produces moments of mercy, but mercy here is pragmatic, not sentimental. Prisoners spared from execution owe allegiance or ransom. Their lives are preserved to serve purpose. Others are cast into the deep without farewells, their deaths a swift reminder that life aboard these vessels dances on the edge of survival and oblivion. Your thoughts drift to the precarious position of these captives, their fate dangling between a noose, silent starvation, or the hope of ransom money. They are pawns caught in a game where the rules shift with wind and tide, where every moment teeters on disaster. Piracy punishes weakness cruelly, and prisoners embody the ultimate vulnerability. You hear the grinding of shackles and the murmurs of despair mingle with the sea's eternal song, a haunting reminder of the ever-present gulf between power and helplessness on these lawless waters. The dual nature of captivity shapes pirate life and legend alike. To outsiders, pirates are often seen as savage and merciless, but you see this nuanced truth. Economic necessity and the brutal calculus of survival dictate actions far more than blind cruelty. Still, this knowledge offers little comfort to those shackled in the holds, waiting for an uncertain fate. The complexity of pirate justice extends even to the treatment of captives, illustrating the blurred line between villainy and necessity. You see how decisions fluctuate with the tides of fortune and desperation. Some prisoners who survived the early horrors find themselves enlisted, press-ganged into the crew, or given a chance to prove their loyalty. A former enemy becomes a tentative comrade, yet trust remains fragile and easily broken. Yet for every fragile friendship there are whispered tales of betrayal and cruelty. You hear of captives executed without trial, sometimes as warnings to pirates' enemies or as sacrifices, to quell unrest within the crew. The captain's power can be absolute and his word final. Decisions made in the fleeting heat of conflict, with little regard for mercy. These grim realities challenge the romanticized tales of noble pirates and gallant rogues. You understand that piracy is a violent, chaotic dance where survival often demands a cold heart and ruthless decisions. But even in the darkest corners of this brutal world, threads of humanity and glimpses of honor persist, tangled in the blood-stained fabric of pirate life. As you watch the prisoners locked below decks, you feel the weight of their fate settling heavily. They embody the stakes of piracy, not just gold and glory, but life and death, power and submission, hope and dread. The rattling chains are the heartbeat of a harsh world ruled by force and fortune, a reminder that in the lawless sea, justice is often the sharp edge of a blade or the cold silence of the ocean's depths. Historians debate fiercely how pirates' treatment of prisoners shaped their reputation. Were they brutal savages feared by all, or pragmatic marauders navigating the harsh realities of survival? The truth, as you've seen, refuses simple answers. It lives somewhere between terror and a twisted form of justice born from desperation and necessity. In the end, the captive's plight is a somber mirror. It reflects the fragility of human life aboard these unforgiving ships, caught between hope and the cruel whims of pirates and the sea. Every rattling chain echoes the relentless heartbeat of a pirate's world, uncertain, dangerous, and endlessly precarious. The promise of treasure is what lured you aboard this cursed vessel. The glitter of gold coins, the flash of precious jewels, and the endless dream of unimaginable wealth. Yet as days bleed into weeks, and your hands grow calloused and cracked, that promise reveals itself to be less of a shining beacon and more of a distant mirage slipping further away with every crashing wave. You stand amid barrels and crates once filled with spices, silk, and fine goods, now sodden with salt and battered by storms, the treasures within far less dazzling than stories claimed. The chests rumored to overflow with riches often contain nothing more than cracked glass beads, tarnished silver coins scattered thinly, or heaps of base trinkets with little real value. The excitement that sparks when loot is found fades quickly once the crew realizes the haul barely covers the cost of shattered limbs, bruises, and lost time. Gold, it seems, is a cruel puzzle, rarely enough to fill every man's pocket, and, when spilled, easily swallowed by the sea, rival pirates or sheer misfortune. Fortune and failure waltz a deadly tango in the pirate world. The largest treasures are exceptional, fleeting flashes of joy against an endless backdrop of failed raids, empty ship hulls, and bitter squabbles over meager spoils. Their rarity fuels myths of cursed gold, treasures said to poison those who claim them, legends whispered between sips of sour rum. Whether real or invented by desperate sailors, these curses drive fear and superstition deeper into pirate life, haunting fortunes and fueling paranoia. Pirates' codes often tried to impose fairness on the division of spoils, but greed runs fast and deep. Shares were allocated depending on rank, injuries sustained, or special tasks completed. Yet fairness was always fragile. You see shadows of suspicion flicker in eyes once wide with camaraderie. The captain might discreetly hide a precious coin, or a crewman disappear with a rare jewel under cover of darkness. The tension over treasure divides and binds in equal measure. Amidst the wealth and want, you witness the faces of men who have been hollowed out by disappointment. The dream of treasure that once sparked fierce hope now flickers low, replaced by bitterness and desperation. Some retreat into themselves, eyes dull with loss, while others spiral into reckless violence or drown sorrows in the ship's ever-flowing rum. The sea doesn't just take lives, it swallows dreams whole, leaving broken shells of men clutching shadows of what might have been. Despite the scarcity, hope remains an enduring fire. Every ship distant on the horizon becomes a beacon, a tatui, potential prize bearing gold, food, weapons, or fresh opportunities. You watch eyes light with fleeting excitement, the crew murmuring prayers and plotting daring raids. This hope sustains the men as much as the salt-cured meat or borrowed grog, a bitter balm that battles despair and fuels relentless pursuit of fortune. The myth versus reality of pirate treasure is one historians continue to unravel. Tales of vast hoards of gold and jewels are often sensationalized, growing taller with every retelling in taverns or books. Yet beneath the exaggerated legend lies a rugged truth. Most pirates plied a harsh, gritty trade marked by long stretches of hunger, poverty, and loss punctuated by rare glimmers of success. You come to understand that the pirate life was less about guaranteed wealth and more about gambling on uncertain odds, with the occasional jackpot tipping the scales against inescapable hardships. Still, the dream's power is magnetic. Too magnetic for many men to abandon, even as it grinds them into sand beneath the relentless tides of reality. You find yourself caught in this vicious cycle, a dreamer chasing the glint of gold through storms, violence, and shattered hopes. Treasure isn't only gold and jewels, it's food, weapons, and supplies, vital for survival. You see the crew scramble over crates filled with salted meat, barrels of fresh water, sacks of flour, and carefully packed medical supplies. In the harsh rhythm of piracy, these items can be more valuable than any pile of coins. Securing fresh provisions means life, meaning the ship can sail farther, fight longer, and maintain a flicker of hope against the dark. Beyond material wealth, legend and reputation are treasured forms of currency. Every successful raid adds to the crew's fearsome name, echoing through coastal towns and portside taverns. A pirate ship known for cunning strikes or horrifying brutality walks a path paved with both dread and respect. You understand how reputation can wield power, deterring enemies, attracting crew, and influencing alliances. It's a weapon as sharp as any sword, wielded with flair and fear. Luck, wild and unpredictable, has the final say. You hear tales of fortune turning on a dime, ships sinking moments after a glorious capture, crews decimated by storm in fresh triumph's wake. The sea is a fickle mistress, indifferent to valor or greed. Your life balances on her shifting will, so. Brutal reminder that no treasure is ever truly safe. The pirate's dream and harsh reality clash in your soul. You see the faces of men who started with shimmering hopes, now faded into lines of grit, pain, and resilience. The promise of treasure is a siren's song, thrilling yet treacherous, leading many to destruction. Among these haunted faces you realize survival is its own triumph, brief and hard-won. As the ship creaks and rolls beneath the vast sky, you steel yourself for another day on this grim quest, chasing dreams as endless as the sea, knowing they are both your torment and your salvation. Betrayal, dark, sharp and sudden, is the festering wound beneath the pirate's swagger, an ever-present shadow gnawing at the fragile bonds between shipmates and threatening to tear them apart. You sense it in the sideways glances exchanged, in the dim light below deck, the hushed and hurried conversations behind barrels, the sudden chill hitting a once warm handshake, or the quiet avoidance of a formerly trusted friend. Greed and paranoia twist men into foes before your eyes, and the fragile fabric of loyalty begins to unravel thread by thread. Every small spark risks igniting a wildfire of suspicion and violence. Pirates live in a world where trust is scarce. Currency. It is too easily spent, and betrayal can be both sudden and deadly. You have witnessed how quickly alliances fracture under pressure, how whispered plots and secret schemes brew in dark corners out of sight of the captain and quartermaster. Mutiny is a whispered threat aboard every pirate vessel, a dangerous gamble against the captain's authority and crew's unity, fueled by hunger, fear, desperation, or fractured dreams. Each man carries his own reasons, some more desperate than others. The stakes of betrayal are nothing less than life and death. Defiance or disloyalty can lead to marooning on a desolate island, the swift justice of a noose, or a silent blade buried in the dark. Pirates understand that while camaraderie can be their strongest shield against the brutal ocean and hostile world, a single knife in the back can bring ruin in an instant. You watch tense confrontations unfold, a whispered accusation igniting into shouted threats, knives scraping free from leather sheaths, and the ship itself holding its breath amidst the rising chaos. Some betrayals arise from sheer desperation, rations dwindling to crumbs, treasure elusive as a phantom, and the future veiled in uncertainty. Men make split-second choices to protect themselves, sometimes at the expense of their closest comrades. Others are colder, calculated moves, a chance to gain favor with the captain, climb the ranks, or seize control of the ship. You learn to read murmurs and glances colder than the ocean night, to watch hands twitching near hidden weapons, and to guard your owns too fiercely to invite treachery. Yet beneath the surface of darkness, a complex code flickers, a fragile but respected honor among thieves. Mutiny is not undertaken lightly. It is a powder keg primed for destruction. A last desperate step to escape intolerable tyranny or to save a ship spiraling toward ruin. Some captains earned their crew's hatred by cruelty, incompetence, or greed, making rebellion the only path to survival. Still, the cost is high. A failed mutiny can mean brutal execution or merciless marooning, a fate feared above all else. The line between freedom and death here is razor thin, carved with the edges of swords and shattered trust. These tensions, the push and pull between loyalty and treachery, drive the heartbeat of pirate life. You witness day after day how unity can quickly dissolve under pressure, how old bonds fracture through suspicion and fear, and how the fragile trust necessary to keep a ship afloat is constantly tested and repaired by whispered promises and harsh truths. Historians debate fiercely whether pirate crews were truly democratic brotherhoods or merely volatile coalitions held together by fear and necessity. Your own experiences show a tumultuous blend of both, a chaotic, thrilling, dangerous dance on the razor's edge of loyalty and betrayal, where every word and gesture carries weight beyond the surface. Betrayal isn't confined to the ship's wooden walls. Beyond the decks, in shadowed pirate ports and hidden coves, the politics of piracy twist into a tangled web of alliances and double crosses. You see brutal deals struck in smoky taverns, favors exchanged with a sharp smile that hides knives behind backs, and rumors spun like spiderwebs designed to ensnare the unsuspecting. The pirate world's survival often hinges not only on swords but on treacherous loyalties that shift with the tides. Even the fiercest pirate captains walk this delicate line. To hold power means navigating a labyrinth of favors, threats, and betrayals, dealing with rival crews, corrupt officials, and the constant threat of betrayal from within their own ranks. Every alliance might be temporary, every handshake hiding a knife's edge. Trust is rare beyond the bottle and the bluster. Yet, amid all this treachery, you find moments of fierce loyalty and brotherhood. Battles fought side by side forge bonds. Deeper than blood, laughter shared in the dead of night offers refuge from harsh realities, and sacrifices made in the heat of conflict sanctify friendships fragile but real. These moments are precious and rare, casting brief light across the dark sea of danger and deceit. Ultimately, piracy is a life balanced on a razor's edge, a dangerous dance where trust can save you or destroy you, where betrayal shapes destinies as surely as cannon fire. You've seen friends become enemies overnight, and the bitter taste of broken loyalty linger far longer than any wound. It is a ruthless world that demands vigilance, cunning, and an iron heart to survive. Historians still argue the true nature of loyalty and betrayal among pirates, the fierce brotherhood versus the inevitable fracture. Your own journey reveals a volatile, human story shaped by desperation, power, and the ceaseless pursuit of freedom. In the end, betrayal is a scar, carried by every pirate, a constant reminder that the only certainty in this violent world is uncertainty itself. The long, weary hours spent sailing toward distant ports carry a quiet despair that presses on the crew's spirits like the oppressive heat of the tropical sun. The endless stretch of blue horizon offers no promise of safety or rest, only the cruel reminder of how far from home and civilization they have truly drifted. You learn quickly that life aboard a pirate ship is not just a battle of swords and cannonballs, but a grueling test of endurance against loneliness, longing, and the constant threat of disaster lurking beneath every wave. In the silent watches of the night, the weight of isolation settles deep into your bones. You stand watch under an ink-black sky, stars cold and distant as pinpricks of light, while your thoughts wander to families left behind, dreams abandoned on distant shores, and the fragile thread of hope tethered only by the ship's rhythmic sway. The sea sings its endless hypnotic song, a haunting lullaby that soothes and torments in equal measure, filling the void with whispers of what might have been. Conversations between crew members become rare and terse, each man carefully guarded against opening wounds too raw or revealing truths too bitter to bear. When words do come, they are hushed and precious, stories of home shared in flickering candlelight, whispered prayers offered to absent gods, or bitter jokes crafted to stave off the encroaching despair. You see how shared hardship forges a yao, bond that no words alone could create. A brotherhood carved from salt-slicked decks, blood-stained struggles, and the mutual understanding that survival depends on unity. Yet the harsh loneliness breeds dangers beyond mere solitude. Fear and superstition thrive in the shadows of the ship's hold, twisting reality into nightmares that haunt even the bravest souls. You overhear murmured warnings of ghost ships sailing phantom seas, sea monsters lurking beneath dark waves with teeth like daggers, and ancient curses whispered by weathered sailors who have sailed too long under cursed stars. These tales weave through the crew's collective consciousness like fever dreams, offering both comfort and terror. The endless days blur together in a haze of routine and anticipation. You notice how sailors cling desperately to rituals, touching worn charms with trembling fingers, reciting half-remembered prayers, or following routines so ingrained they feel sacred. These small acts serve as anchors against the swirling chaos of uncertainty, offering fragile islands of comfort in a world ruled by the whims of wind and tide. During the long waits between battles and storms, unexpected opportunities emerge. You seize precious moments to mend torn clothes with careful stitches, sharpen weapons dulled by salt and use, or share scant laughter around brief fires that warm both hands and hearts. These small acts of maintenance and camaraderie sustain the soul, offering threads of hope woven through the fabric of endless hardship. The psychological toll of this isolation cannot be understated. You watch strong men crack under the pressure, their eyes growing distant as they stare at horizons that never seem to change. Some retreat into themselves, building walls of silence that no amount of coaxing can breach. Others become volatile, their tempers flaring at the smallest provocation as the strain of confinement tests every relationship aboard the vessel. Sleep becomes both refuge and torment. In dreams, you return to solid ground, taste fresh bread, feel the warmth of loved one's embraces, only to wake to the harsh reality of creaking timbers and the endless motion of the sea. The contrast between dream and reality grows sharper with each passing day, a cruel reminder of everything you have sacrificed for this dangerous life. As dawn finally breaks over the endless waters, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, you understand that the journey is far from over. Each day aboard the pirate ship represents a relentless battle, not just against external enemies, but against the sea itself, against sickness and hunger, and against the complex, ever-shifting tides of human nature. The horizon may hold promise of adventure or treasure, but the path remains jagged, uncertain, and fraught with perils both seen and unseen. Survival here is a fragile gift, won only through the daily choice to endure the ceaseless storm of life, both within the ship's confines and in the vast, indifferent ocean that surrounds you on all sides. The specter of death hovers over every pirate ship like a persistent shadow, never far from the creaking timbers and salt-stained sails. You feel its presence in the labored breathing of sick crewmates, see it in the flash of steel during heated arguments, and hear it whispered in the storm winds that threaten to tear the vessel apart. Death aboard a pirate ship is not a distant possibility, but an immediate, ever-present reality that shapes every decision and colors every moment with urgency. Disease claims more pirates than any sword or cannon ever could. You watch helplessly as scurvy ravages once strong bodies, turning proud sailors into hollow shells of their former selves. Gums bleed freely, teeth loosen and fall like leaves in autumn, and joints swell with agonizing pain that no amount of rum can dull. The ship's cramped quarters become breeding grounds for typhus, dysentery, and fevers that spread like wildfire through the crew, claiming victims with ruthless efficiency. Violence, too, is a constant companion on these lawless vessels. Arguments over treasure shares or perceived slights can escalate into deadly duels fought on moonlit decks. You witness the flash of cutlass blades in lantern light, hear the clash of steel on steel, and see men fall bleeding onto weathered planks. Sometimes the violence is swift and decisive, a knife between the ribs during a heated disagreement. Other times it unfolds slowly, like the public floggings that leave backs raw and spirits broken. The sea itself is perhaps the cruelest executioner of all. Storms can swallow entire crews in moments, sending ships to watery graves where no prayers or pleas for mercy can reach. You've seen men swept overboard by towering waves, their screams lost in the howling wind as they disappear beneath the dark waters. The ocean keeps its victims, offering no chance for proper burial or final words to loved ones left behind. When death finally claims a crew member, the rituals are both solemn and practical. Bodies wrapped in sailcloth are committed to the deep with brief ceremonies that mix superstition with genuine grief. You hear the captain's gruff words spoken over the deceased, see hardened pirates remove their caps in respect, and witness the splash that marks another soul's journey to Davy Jones's locker. These moments remind everyone aboard that their own fate may be similarly swift and final. The constant proximity to death creates a unique philosophy among pirates.
Many embrace a fatalistic worldview, believing their destinies are written in the stars and cannot be changed by mortal effort. Others rage against the dying of the light, fighting ferociously to squeeze every drop of life from their dangerous
existence. You learn to recognize both types, the resigned and the defiant, and understand how each copes with mortality's shadow. Superstitions multiply in death's presence like barnacles on a ship's hull, Sailors speak in hushed tones of ghost ships crewed by the damned, of cursed treasures that bring doom to those who touch them, and of omens that foretell disaster. A albatross following the ship might herald good fortune or terrible catastrophe, depending on which old salt tells the tale. These beliefs offer some comfort in an uncertain world, providing explanations for the inexplicable and rituals to ward off evil. The fear of dying alone and unmourned haunts many pirates' thoughts during quiet moments, far from family and homeland, with no guarantee that news of their fate will ever reach those who cared for them. They face the possibility of vanishing without trace. This isolation adds another layer of tragedy to lives already marked by hardship and violence. Yet paradoxically, the constant threat of death also brings intensity and meaning to every experience. Colors seem brighter, friendships deeper, and simple pleasures more precious when viewed through the lens of mortality. A shared meal becomes a celebration, a moment of laughter, a triumph over despair, and each sunrise a gift to be treasured rather than taken for granted. Survival on a pirate ship is not a single triumph. It is a ritual of endurance repeated with every sunrise, a relentless negotiation between body, mind, and the merciless sea. The first lesson carved into salt-burned skin is that survival rarely looks heroic. It looks like rationing breath during a storm so panic doesn't win. It looks like chewing stale biscuits slow to convince the stomach it has feasted. It looks like standing watch with eyes that sting from smoke and salt, refusing to blink first before the horizon does. It looks like one more day, because one more day means one more chance. Routines become sacred even when they taste like ash. A morning scraping of decks, a midday check of lines and sails, an evening count of water, biscuits, and arguments, all of it lays thin planks across the abyss. The body adapts by necessity. Bruises become familiar maps. Muscles learn the ship's moods, and hands grow calluses thick enough to shrug off rope burn. Survival is a conversation where pain speaks first and duty answers second, until both voices blur into the dull hum of persistence. Food is not simply nourishment, it is strategy. Salt pork has to be soaked. Biscuits must be beaten to drive out weevils. Water must be rationed to outlast heat and misfortune. Every mouthful is weighed against distance, weather, and rumor. A lucky raid yields citrus and fresh casks, elixir against scurvy and despair alike. A drought of opportunity turns the crew into mathematicians of hunger, trimming portions and stretching hope until both are paper thin. The body learns to hold energy like a miser hoarding coin. Sleep becomes an art of fragments. A half hour here, 2 hours there, stitched together in a patchwork that never quite covers the mind. Dreams arrive salted and strange. Storms that speak in lost voices. Shores that vanish as soon as they appear. Familiar faces blurred by spray. The trick is to accept the incompleteness and rise anyway, to trade perfection for enough. Survival tolerates no purist. It crowns the pragmatic, the flexible, the stubborn. Weapons maintenance is its own liturgy. Steel demands attention in this world of rust. Blades are cleaned, edges kissed with whetstone, grips re-wrapped with leather softened by sweat. Pistols are kept dry, priming powder guarded like treasure. A weapon poorly tended is not just useless, it is betrayal at the exact moment courage is required. Tools become confidants. A well-kept cutlass feels like a promise held in the hand. The mind is the battlefield most often overlooked. Isolation gnaws where wounds cannot be bandaged. Survival depends on stories told at the right moment, a bawdy joke shared under a dripping awning, a memory of a mother's bread, a curse hurled at the sea with enough conviction to sound like prayer. The crew trades tales as if they were medicine, because sometimes they are. A laugh today buys 2 more hours of strength tomorrow. Leadership is survival multiplied. A captain must read the weather in voices and tempers as much as in clouds and currents. A quartermaster must anchor fairness with a firm hand that never looks cruel. The best leaders know when to speak softly and when to flay the deck with thunder, when to divide rations and when to divide blame, when to punish and when to gamble on mercy. Poor leadership hemorrhages morale faster than a hull leaks in winter seas. Good leadership seals the fractures before they become mutiny. Survival also means knowing when not to fight. A fat merchant ship shadowed by a war escort is not opportunity. It is a maw with a smile. A storm with a green-black belly means prudence, not bravado. A crew already stretched thin by sickness cannot afford heroics dressed as courage. The strongest decisions are often the quietest. Drop the chase, reef the sail, live to be bold another day. Rituals and superstition weave a supporting net beneath logic. A talisman kissed before boarding. A coin tapped against the mast. A vow spoken to a friendly wind. These are not proofs. They are scaffolds the weary mind climbs to reach confidence. Even the skeptical join in because survival is as much about shared belief as it is about shared labor. A crew aligned by ritual rows in rhythm through the blackest water. Injury management turns pirates into reluctant physicians. Vinegar cleanses, tar seals, rum numbs, and cloth compresses. Splints are carved from broken spars. Slings are fashioned from torn shirts. Infection is the hidden reef everyone fears. The best chance is speed, cleanliness, and rest. Luxuries, granted only when the sea is merciful. Scars become a tally of debts paid and collected. Every healed wound is a lesson. Every lost man, a vow to learn faster. Navigation is survival's chessboard. Charts patched with guesses, stars read through torn clouds, currents learned by memory and taste. A compass that swings true is a blessing. A mind that holds bearings is a treasure. Small errors eat time. Large errors eat crews. The horizon forgives nothing, but it rewards patience. Adjust a degree here, trim a line there, and a week later the difference is land instead of legend. Silence is a tool as vital as rope. There are days when the best way through is to speak little, listen much, and let tempers cool without audience. A single muttered insult can spiral into knives. A single steady gaze can unspool a knot of fear. Survival favors those who can swallow a retort as cleanly as they swallow stale water. Pride feeds the sea. Restraint feeds tomorrow. Weather reading is the closest thing to prophecy mortals possess. Clouds with ragged skirts, swells that change their gait, gulls that vanish inland. Each tells a fragment of the future. The crew learns to move like a single organism, reefing canvas as if pulling a blanket over a sleeping giant, swinging booms with timing worthy of surgeons. When the storm hits, survival is already decided by what was done an hour ago. Supply. Cunning is its own seamanship. A hidden cask under false planking. A coil of line tucked inside a barrel marked nails. A spare lantern sealed in wax and hope. Redundancy looks like paranoia until it looks like genius. The sea respects the prepared more than the brave. On land, survival changes costumes but keeps its teeth. Ports glitter with temptation sharpened by traps. A friendly tavern that whispers to the wrong ears. A black market that sells out buyers. A smile that costs a fortune. Shore leave is rationed like powder. The crew goes in pairs. Spending is logged. Curfews turn riot into rest. Those who treat land like a lullaby often wake in chains. Reputation becomes an armor fitted from choices. A crew known to keep its word buys safe passage where others buy fights. A ship that spreads terror sometimes wins without firing a shot, but it also gathers enemies like barnacles. The wisest survivors temper fear with predictability. Ruthless in battle, reliable in trade, invisible when needed. Even joy is a survival tactic. A pot of stew shared after a lean week. A song shouted into spray until voices crack. A card game with stones for stakes and insults for currency. Joy interrupts despair's momentum. It reminds muscles why they keep lifting, lungs why they keep working, hearts why they keep choosing mourning. The cost is never hidden. Survival demands payment in coin minted from sleep, blood, humility, and compromise. The ship extracts interest without pity. And still men choose it, because survival at sea carries a fierce purity. Every victory is earned in full, signed by callus and bruise, stamped by horizon and wind. The lesson the sea forces on all who endure it is simple and unsentimental. Survival is not luck and not legend. It is accumulation, of habits, of small, smart choices, of discipline strong enough to restrain impulse, of courage precise enough to refuse folly. Live like this long enough, and fortune begins to look less like chance and more like consequence. At dusk, when the light thins and the water turns iron blue, the day's ledger closes. Sails hold. Lines sing but do not scream. The compass points where it should. The crew is tired in the honest way. No one fell. No one broke. No one lost the thread. In the quiet that follows, survival feels almost like grace. Not because the sea was kind, but because the crew was worthy. And tomorrow the ritual begins again. Check the lines, count the water, bank the tempers, sharpen the steel, share the story, watch the sky, choose the fight, and choose, above everything, to endure. That is how pirates lived long enough to become rumors, and how rumors lived long enough to become legends carved, not in marble, but in salt and wind, and the stubborn will to see another dawn. Freedom, the word that first lured you to sea, wears many disguises. It is not merely the absence of chains or the thrill of open water. It is a pact made in hardship, a daily vow to choose danger over dullness, uncertainty over a life already decided. On a pirate ship, freedom is learned the hard way. Cutlass in hand, salt in the blood, and a horizon that refuses to come closer no matter how long you chase it. It's louder than the wind in the rigging and quieter than the moment right before a storm breaks. It is both a battle cry and a whispered prayer. Freedom starts as hunger. A hunger to escape the narrow lanes and narrow minds of the shore. A hunger to turn a life that felt like a locked room into one with windows flung wide. On deck, the sky is so big it feels like a promise, and the rules are written in salt and sweat instead of ink and laws. You learn quickly that the cost of membership is everything. Safety, certainty, sometimes sanity. But the membership benefits are stark and irresistible. The right to decide when to fight, when to flee, when to forgive, and when to take what the world will never offer freely. It becomes a rhythm. Wake before dawn and measure the wind. Count the rations. Scout the horizon. Brace for whatever the day demands. Negotiation, battle, patching sails, patching hearts. Freedom is not the absence of duty. It is choosing the duty. When the quartermaster calls for hands, they rise not because a king or navy says so, but because survival requires volunteers. When decisions are made, voices weigh in. When loot is divided, a record is kept by men who can read not just numbers, but fairness. The code is not kind, but it is chosen. The lash is not absent, but it is explained. On land, punishment was a spectacle. At sea, it is a calculus carved from necessity. There is a dignity to that. Rough, scarred, but real. You feel it when a vote is called in moonlight and every face turns to listen. You feel it when a reckless plan is rejected and no one is hanged for saying no. You feel it when a wounded man eats first and the captain eats last. These are not fantasies or the inventions of romantic poets. They are the scaffolds that keep a fragile community from falling into chaos. The world calls pirates lawless. The truth is more complicated. The world beyond the horizon is merciless, and so the law here is built to hold against wind and wave. Freedom also means no illusions. Treasure is not guaranteed. Safety is not promised. Betrayal is always possible. Cure seldom arrives and miracles are rare, and yet men sing. They sing because a song is something no storm can steal. They gamble with stones when coins are scarce because the game matters as much as the stakes. They carve little charms from scraps of wood and tuck them into pockets, not because wood can stop a bullet, but because belief can stop despair. This too is freedom, the right to keep a private fire lit in a place that tries to blow it out. The horizon teaches a harsh curriculum. It teaches patience, because things worth chasing refuse to come quickly. It teaches courage, because there is no other kind that lasts. It teaches humility, because the sea laughs at any who mistake boldness for invincibility. The ship is a schoolhouse with moving walls, and every lesson is graded in bruises. Some men fail and vanish. Some learn just enough to see another dawn. A few learn so much they become something else, iron-willed and tender-eyed, sharp-tongued and steady-handed, a paradox that only the sea can polish into truth. Freedom is not the same for every soul who boards. For one man, it is revenge with a sail on it. For another, it is relief from a name he no longer wants. For a third, it is simply a wage paid in choices rather than coins. You begin to understand that freedom is not one banner, but many rags stitched together. It looks like the quiet after a fight that should have killed you but didn't. It looks like a hand extended to lift a crewmate instead of a shove to send him over. It looks like the moment you decide not to lie to yourself about what you're willing to do and what you refuse to become. Some chase freedom until it turns on them. They confuse defiance with wisdom, speed with aim, volume with authority. The sea is patient with fools right up until it isn't. You witness captains who mistake fear for loyalty, and crews who mistake noise for courage. Both end the same way, wreckage on black water or shackles in a port that knows how to profit from men who overplayed their hand. Freedom without discipline is just drift. Freedom without memory is just repetition. And then, amazingly, there is mercy. Rare as a calm in hurricane season, but real. A captain spares a prisoner who could fetch a ransom because he sees himself in the boy's face and remembers what it cost to become a man who didn't flinch. A crew divides their meager water equally on a blistering week, because the ledger of kindness is sometimes the only book worth balancing. A lookout warns a rival ship off a reef instead of watching it crack, because he cannot stomach another chorus of drowning. These moments don't make legends, they make people. They don't last long enough for ballads, but they last long enough to matter. Freedom wears fatigue like a cloak. It means you choose to stay awake 1 hour more to make sure no lantern goes out. It means you hold your tongue when rage would feel better because rage makes poor rope and the ship needs rope. It means you let go of a grudge the size of a cannonball because the hull can't take one more hole, and neither can the heart. Freedom is not always the roar of defiance. Sometimes it is the quiet refusal to let bitterness be the captain. Sure, freedom is risk by another name. Taverns promise forgetfulness. Alleys promise endings. A dockside deal looks like salvation and tastes like poison. Here, too, choice is the currency. The wise learn to spend slowly. A safe bed over a louder night. A short memory with customs men and a long one with debt. The ship's code reaches into town like a shadow. Even in revelry, the crew keeps watch over one another because the only thing more fragile than a hull at sea is a reputation in port. One broken promise costs 3 future harbors. One reckless brawl buys a war every time the sails show on. The horizon. Reputation, that invisible sail, fills or falls with every decision. A feared name can end a battle before it begins. A fair one can open doors no grappling hook can reach. The clever captain trims both winds, ruthless when cornered, reliable when bargained with, unseen when hunted. That is a form of freedom too, not just to be strong, but to be selective, not just to be loud, but to be legible, so allies can, find you and enemies can misread you. There are spiritual forms of freedom the sea gives and no church can teach. The first is scale, the reminder that a human is small and that smallness can be a relief. The second is attention. When weather turns, everything unnecessary falls away, and what remains is true. The third is communion, not with saints and relics but with elements. Wind as breath, salt as blood, wood as bone. It is difficult to lie to oneself while reefing a sail in rain that stings like bees. The body demands honesty, the tongue cannot counterfeit. Not everyone keeps what they find. Some return to shore with pockets heavy and souls lightened, ready to trade the horizon for hedgerows and a child's laughter. Others cannot go back because freedom has remade them into something that doesn't fit indoors. They become the rumor. At a market stall, the story a fisherman swears is true. The reason a child stares too long at the line where ocean meets sky and thinks someday. The world needs both, the ones who come home and the ones who don't. The sea keeps its secrets, and its students. There is a price list written nowhere, paid everywhere. Freedom costs sleep and teeth. and years that could have been spent quietly. It costs the comfort of being told what to do and the warmth of being liked by everyone. It costs certainty most of all. In exchange, it gives mornings that feel earned, friendships tested in fire and brine, and the right to look at one's own reflection without flinching. For some, that is a bargain. For others, it is a warning. The sea doesn't care which. The decision is private and final. Freedom, in the end, is not an object stored in a chest or a right conferred by a document. It is a posture. Knees bent. Eyes up. Hands ready. Mouth closed when needed, open when necessary. Heart steady enough to hold fear without dripping it on the deck. It is the discipline to steer 1 point off disaster for 3 days in a row without applause. It is the grace to share the last orange. It is the courage to forgive a man you must trust tomorrow. On certain rare nights, when the wind is all spine and silk, and the water has the texture of hammered metal, and the stars have gathered shoulder to shoulder, as if to watch, the ship moves like a thought. No creak complains. No line snarls. The lookout hums without meaning to. The helmsman smiles with his mouth closed. In that hush, freedom is not struggle or bargain. It is ease. It is alignment. It is the feeling of fitting correctly into a universe that usually shrugs you off like foam. Those nights don't last. They don't need to. They are proof. At dawn, the proof is folded and stowed with the charts. The day demands work again. Sails to set, food to stretch, tempers to bank, rumors to test, choices to weigh. The horizon does its trick, far and near, near and far, and you fall for it one more time. That too is freedom. Not that you can finally catch what you chase, but that you can choose to chase what is worthy, and become worthy in the chasing. If there is a final lesson the sea presses into bone, it is this. Freedom is not won once, it is maintained. Like a hull, it is scraped of barnacles. Like a blade, it is honed. Like a map, it is corrected as new coasts are found. Let it go for a week and rope rots. Let it go for a season and the ship sags. Keep it, and the ship carries you through water that would drown a man walking. Keep it, and even if the world calls you outlaw, you will know another word. Owner, of time, of ore. Choice of consequences of self. So you stand at the rail, knuckles white with salt and habit, watching light collect on waves like coins in a giant's palm. The day is unpromised and unscripted. The ship will demand, the crew will test, the weather will threaten, and still, you smile, small, honest, necessary, because whatever comes, it will be something you meet on your feet. That is the only treasure that cannot be taken, buried, lost, or betrayed. That is the flag no cannonball can shred. That is freedom, hard-won and seaworthy, flying from a mast the world did not give. You and cannot lower. Myth is the sea's second language. It speaks in shapes glimpsed between waves, in whispers that ride the wind. In omens the superstitious and sensible alike pretend not to believe until the night grows too quiet. Aboard a pirate ship, myth is not mere story. It is a tool, a warning, a comfort, and sometimes a chain. You learn to hear it the way a helmsman hears the swell. Part music, part mathematics, part threat. It arrives on deck in rough voices and leaves behind decisions disguised as destiny. The oldest myths travel the fastest, ghost ships that never reach a port, bells heard under flat seas, lights wandering at the edge of vision, too steady for fire and too sly for stars. You meet men who claim to have seen a crew that never blinked, another that never ate, a third that moved as one because a single will pulled every limb. Stories thick as fog cling to rigging on humid nights, and even those who swear by reason tuck their amulets beneath their shirts a little tighter. There is a hierarchy to belief. Weather omens stand near the top, a bruise-colored horizon at noon, swells shearing against each other like sharpening blades, birds that vanish inland without a sound. Even the skeptical grow quiet when these appear. Next come creatures, the great shadows that roll beside the hull for miles, the phosphorescent wakes that flicker like script too quick to read, the sudden shoals of fish behaving as if chased by a jaw that spans a prayer's length. At the bottom, but most irresistible, are curses. cargoes that doom a voyage, coins that carry a habit of betrayal, maps that refuse to lead anywhere but loss. You don't need to believe in curses to respect them. You only need to tally how many times misfortune arrives in the same clothes. A chest changes hands and tempers rot. A figurehead carved with a smile drowns 3 helmsmen before a 4th survives. A certain song, sung at dusk, draws lightning on a clear night twice in a month. Skeptics call it chance. Veterans call it pattern. The wise call it a choice. Change the figurehead, stop the song, pass the chest to another fate. Superstition is often just risk management with poetry. The sea has saints too, though no chapel claims them. A woman who walked across a becalmed bay to feed a marooned crew bread that never ran out. A boy who tied himself to a cannon and rode a storm as if it were a colt, then cut the rope at dawn and said, "Told you she'd behave." A cook who threw the last onions into a pot and boiled a wind out of their scent. Absurd? Perhaps, but when the mast stops groaning after a whispered name is spoken, even the derisive nod along. Hope needs a body to wear, and these saints fit well enough. Myth is also a weapon. The captain who knows this holds 2 kinds of power. The practical kind measured in guns and timber, and the invisible kind measured in how a crew breathes. A rumor placed at the right hour can avert a rash raid. A story told low and slow can bind a rift between hardheads too proud to apologize. Ships that chase on a waning moon run aground, the captain might say, and men who scoff at caution obey the moon. That is command by chorus, and it keeps blood off the planks. But myth can mutiny. A whisper that the captain is cursed can kill him faster than a pistol. A conviction that a man has the dead look can exile him within a crowd. A belief that a certain star hates the ship can unman a helmsman at midnight. You watch how swiftly fear becomes geometry, drawing angles no sail can fill. The antidote is work and witness. A rope spliced, a reef read correctly. A night survived. By competence so steady it silences the tale. Facts must be stacked like ballast until rumor can't tip the ship. Port myths are a different species. Slicker, with coins for eyes. They sell safety and buy secrets. A tavern keeper swears that a white dog seen sleeping beneath a table guarantees a lucky departure. The first man to laugh pays for the round and the dog sleeps on. A fence promises maps copied from a dead admiral's private drawer. The parchment looks aged, the ink smells right, and still the sound beneath the conversation is the slide of a trap being set. Port myths are market tricks. Sea myths are weather. Confusing the 2 empties purses and fills graves. In a storm, myth works as harness. Men talk to ropes, call sails by pet names, offer bargains to waves. 1 more gust and I'll mend that quarrel. 2 more feet and I'll swear off dice. When the deck holds together, a promise survives the squall along with the crew. 1 more plank in the moral hull. When the deck does not, the myths carry last words the way a bottle carries a note, which is sometimes all the living need of the dead. Some myths exist to reassure, others exist to restrain. Never kill a man who can still learn, an old bosun says, and suddenly a grudge simmers instead of boiling. Share citrus with the quietest man first, a surgeon says, and a future mutineer remembers the taste of mercy. These are not superstitions so much as policies wearing folklore's coat. The crew accepts them more easily in that clothing. Raw law chafes, stories fit. There is a briny theology that grows in all this. The ocean is the text, wind the commentary, luck the footnotes scrawled in a margin only partly yours. You find yourself praying, sometimes aloud, sometimes in the small motions of habit. 2 taps on the rail when stepping aboard, a glance at the compass before any risky joke, the tiny bow of the head when a gull lands on the yardarm, because to look away is to tempt scarcity. You half smile at yourself for the ritual and keep doing it, because day after day the line holds and the stew stretches and the gulls return. Who argues with results? Not all myths are ancient. The ship makes new ones the way the wake writes and erases at once. A green bottle lodged under a scupper becomes the luck keeper, because a day after it jammed, the enemy's shot missed. Lo. A song the new cabin boy hums proves to shorten tasks because the crew times their pulls to it without noticing. A rope spliced by the same careful hands again and again becomes the good join, and men hunt for its feel when the sea climbs teeth first aboard. These micro-legends map comfort onto chaos, which is one of the rarest magics. You also learn the ethics of telling. Some myths you pass forward intact because they guard a truth bigger than the words. Others you edit because cruelty has been stitched into them, and leaving that stitch in would cut someone who doesn't deserve bleeding. A few you kill on purpose because they ask men to be smaller than they are, and the voyage needs everyone full-sized. Killing a myth takes more work than belief. It requires replacing it with something better that still sings. What of the myths told about pirates by the shorebound? You meet them in pamphlets lining alley bookstalls and in songs shouted by men who have never smelled pitch. Rogues with hearts of gold, devils in hats, kings of coves who answer to no wind. The truth is neither flatterer nor slanderer. Pirates are people with the volume turned up, brave and vicious, tender and mean, generous at dawn and cheap by dusk. To live on a line as fine as a ship's rail forces contradictions to keep company. The better myths admit that. A personal myth forms around you too. At first it feels like a coat borrowed in a rainstorm, useful, not quite yours. A tale about the time you cut a line just when the sail would have burst. The quiet way you sat with a dying man long enough for him to stop searching the dark. Your habit of knowing when a quarrel needs a joke and when it needs a bucket of silence. The crew will put these beads on a string and name it after you. You may hate that necklace or love it, but you will wear it. Take care not to tangle it. It will one day be all that follows you into rooms you have not entered yet. There is, finally, the myth that outlives the ship. The one the sea keeps if no one else does. A route you guessed and got right. A mercy you risked that changed an enemy into a man with a debt instead of a grudge. A night you stood the watch no one wanted and saw the thing no one else noticed. A change in the swell. A cloud with a seam in it. A shadow moving against the wind. And turned the wheel one hand's width that saved lives you will never meet. No musician will write that kind of music. The ocean will. It writes in safety rather than song, in undrownings rather than ballads. Only the quiet understand the melody. When the voyage nears its last chapters, myth asks you a favor. Choose which ones to carry ashore. Keep the ones that make you braver and kinder. Leave the ones that only made you loud. Keep the omen that taught caution. Discard the fear that taught paralysis. Keep the saints that sharpened mercy. Let go of the curses that excused meanness. Freedom, you learned, was a posture. Myth, you now see, is a posture's shadow, longer at dusk, shorter at noon, always attached. On a clear night near Landfall, you stand at the rail and watch constellations arrange themselves into an old story. The hook, the fish, the net, the hand that lets the small ones through. The deck murmurs soft around you. Someone repairing a strap, someone counting in a whisper, someone praying without language. You repeat to yourself the ship's catechism. Read the sky, mind the line, trust. The hands guard the heart. It is both instruction and incantation. It might be nonsense. It also works. Dawn will break the spell as dawn always does, scrubbing the deck with brightness and chores. The myths will retreat to their corners, waiting for night. But you will move through the light differently because of them. Your eye will catch the wave that isn't like the others. Your foot will find the board that complains because it is trying to tell you something. Your temper will soften one notch because the cost of hardness is written in names you remember too clearly. Myth, you understand at last, is not an alternative to reality. It is a grammar for it. It turns terror into instructions and luck into duties. It warns, it warms, it binds, it blinds, so it must be tended like any other ship's gear. Oil the beliefs that keep courage sliding smooth. Replace the ones that splinter. Tie off the ones that fray into cruelty. And when a new sailor asks why the crew taps the rail twice when the first star appears, don't laugh. Show him where the planks are thin and tell him a story that will make him step lighter for reasons he can remember. When the wind roars too loud to hear words. When the voyage ends, if it ends in a bed and not a storm, people ashore will ask for the wildest tales. Give them a few, teeth and thunder, knives and coins, because joy has its rights. Then, when the room quiets, give them the one about the night nothing happened because everything was done right. How the canvas held because the knots were patient. How the water lasted because the cups were small. How no one died because anger was banked like coals and revived as warmth instead of flame. Watch their faces as they learn another kind of glory. Watch a myth begin that might save them in some inland storm you will never see. You step back from the rail. The ship breathes. The stories breathe with it. Your hands smell like tar and citrus and a little like the past. Somewhere ahead, land waits with markets and laws and roofs. Somewhere behind, a line of churn marks the water where you taught and were taught by wind. Between them stands a figure, tired, scarred, steadier than when the chase began. That figure is you, and the myths around you are not cages but sails. They will not decide your course. They will make it possible to hold. 1. Endings at sea do not always announce themselves. They arrive like a change in the wind. First a subtle shift, then a certainty that cannot be bargained with. You feel it before anyone says the word. The voyage has turned toward its last pages. Sails still swell, men still laugh, the cook still curses the same dented pot, but something inside the ship has quieted. It is not defeat. It is recognition. A long circle is closing. You start to count differently. Not miles to the next prize, but days since the last storm. Not the weight of coin, but the names of men still standing. The ledger becomes a memory book. Here is where a rope parted and did not take a wrist. Here is where a quarrel cooled before it drew steel. Here is where the water lasted because the cups were small. Survival has taught a frugal arithmetic, and now it balances against a horizon you never quite reached but learned to love anyway. Farewells begin as practice before they become speech. You catch yourself touching the mast as you pass the way one might brush a shoulder in a crowded room. Excuse me, thank you. Keep me. You look longer at the helmsman's hands, cataloging the small precisions the body learned while the mind was busy being brave. The deck's creaks have become a vocabulary. You realize you can read the ship, joy in a taut line, worry in a skittering block, relief in canvas that sets clean. These are literacies you will not have ashore, and you file them carefully in the place where treasured things go. A final rate is proposed, and declined. The old you would have pushed for it, heart hot, tongue quick. The new you measures the crew's coughs, the thinness of the salted pork, the tear at the leech of the mainsail that held through one squall, and may not through two. Freedom taught you to choose. Wisdom taught you which choices keep freedom alive. The quartermaster nods, reads the same math without numbers, and the ship eases a degree toward land. 1 degree now is a coastline later. Nights soften. The watch speaks less of ghosts and more of gardens. Men who never planned tomorrows begin to plan tools. A hammer that fits the hand, a knife that will slice rope and bread with equal grace, a pair of boots that won't slip on honest mud. Some will fail at shore. They know it. They also know trying is a kind of courage the sea rarely honors and land sometimes does. You find yourself building a small, secret inventory of land skills in your head. How to wake without the bell, how to sit without swaying, how to listen when the silence is not wind but distance, and the distance does not move. Before endings, there is maintenance. The ship demands its rituals as payment for all the times she forgave. Tar boils. Rigging is combed like hair before a wedding. Knots are untied, retied, and then taught to a green hand who will not sail with you but will sail because of you. The surgeon sharpens his tools and then oils them, a craftsman's goodbye. The cook scours the great pot and leaves it on its side to dry, a sunlit mouth grinning at nothing in particular. Even arguments are tidied. Debts are paid with jokes and small gifts. A whetstone, a length of good line, a tin of salve that smells like mint and will outlast the voyage. The captain calls a meeting at dusk. No thunder in his voice, no show of teeth. Just the old balance, firm and plain. He speaks of the next tides, the landmarks to watch, the harbor laws that will snare a fool, the names to give and not give. He reminds the crew where the code reaches, ashore and where it wisely retreats. He does not promise parties or pensions, he promises this: If the ship survives the last day, every man can carry away his share and his story without argument. In pirate arithmetic, that is wealth enough. Later lanterns pocket the dark. Stories come out, but not the loud ones. Not teeth and thunder. The other kind. Someone tells of the night a man cried quietly for an hour, and no one mentioned it because the respect in that silence was truer than comfort. Someone mentions the time a spare shirt appeared in a wet hammock without a word. You offer your own. A small tale about a knot that held because the man tying it remembered to breathe first. The crew laughs gently at the humility of it, and then nods because yes, that is the kind of detail that kept the sea from taking its full due. The last storm does not come. The sea, full of surprises to the end, gives calm instead. Calm thick as oil. A mirror that makes men nervous. Work fills the space where fear might grow. Oars dip. A line is thrown to a lazy tide and treated like a friend asked for a small favor. The sun lowers like a coin you are not sure you deserve but accept with thanks. Someone hums. You recognize the tune from a bad week that somehow refused to end badly. Superstition would call it an omen. Experience calls it a memory making room for another. Land scent arrives before land, green and loam and something animal. It makes throats tighten. A sailor spits and blames the wind for his watery eyes. You smile without being cruel. Ahead, the shore shows itself in cautious pieces. First a smudge, then a line, then a place. The place has roofs that cannot move and trees that explain their shape without hurry. A gull shouts a joke only gulls appreciate. The lookout repeats it badly, and still the deck laughs. Laughter is how endings bless themselves. The harbor has rules, and you obey them. Sails folded with care. Flags chosen with more thought than most prayers. Names selected. The ship's your own. The gangplank goes down, and for a breath you do not cross it. You rest a palm on the rail, the way a student might on an old desk. The grain under your hand remembers every storm you beat together. You say nothing out loud. Even so, the ship hears. Ships always hear. Ashore, the world tilts in a new way. Streets fail to move. The ground refuses to sing. Markets, in their noise, feel louder than gales, and yet nothing needs reefing. You choose a room with a window whose breeze knows how to be kind. The bed holds your back like a surprised friend. Sleep comes dressed in clothes you have not worn for years. It leaves before dawn, the way old shipmates do, politely, without waking the house. Morning ashore is a different test. The hands wait for lines that never arrive, so they learn cups and keys. The eyes wait for horizon, so they learn faces. You buy bread and learn the luxury of tearing it without planning how many bites to save for night. You walk a lane and do not count steps between tasks. The mind, wary of the lull, invents storms that do not exist. You let it. Then you teach it. Here the weather is people. Watch for squalls of temper. Note the currents of rumor. Trim to truth. The skills transfer if you let them. You find work that likes your history. Shipwright's helper, rope maker, Cooper's apprentice, dockman who can read a sky faster than a barometer. Your scars become references. Your patience, once muscle memory on a yard, becomes kindness in a queue. You are surprised to discover that leadership was not the quarterdeck. It was the habit of attention. Men notice. They ask your opinion. You give it less often than you used to, and it lands better because of that. There will be backsliding. A brawl will find you and ask you to be 20 again. You will nearly oblige. Then you will see a boy at the edge of the circle watching the lesson you are about to teach, and you will change the lesson. You will buy a round for the one who insulted you and say, "For your throat, not your courage." He will not understand. He will drink anyway. The room will exhale. That is seamanship too. Some nights the bed rocks phantom slow. You do not fight it. You catalog the sounds. Wind through leaves instead of lines, dogs instead of gulls, a neighbor's kettle instead of a bosun's whistle. You discover a new superstition that pleases you. If the first light through the window is green, go easy. If it is gold, go bold. It is nonsense with teeth in it, which is to say it will carry you far enough. The crew dissolves into the city the way a wave dissolves into shore, each man his own small river. You will see some again by chance or fate, a laugh across a market, a voice behind you in line, a hand on your shoulder when you needed exactly that much weight. Others will vanish into the world's pocket and live out endings you will hear about too late to answer. You write letters you do not send and keep them like maps to places that exist only when you read them. On a certain afternoon months later, the wind off the water will shift. You will look up without meaning to. A sail will stitch itself across the distance. Your heart will do a foolish, honest thing. You will walk to the pier and stand among boys who have never left and men who never will. The ship that docks will not be yours. It will still feel like a cousin. Lines will be thrown and caught. Orders will curl through the air like old jokes. For a moment you will be two people, the one who left and the one who stayed. Then you will become the third, the one who knows how to translate between them. Endings at sea, you learn, refuse to be complete. They fray on purpose into beginnings. The code you carried is useful in markets. The patience you learned keeps neighbors from becoming storms. The mercy you practiced turns strangers into acquaintances fast enough to matter. Even your caution has a shine to it that people trust. You did not come ashore to become someone else. You came ashore to use the parts of yourself the sea made strong. One evening, because the body remembers what the soul forgets, you walk to the edge of the harbor with an orange in your pocket. You peel it slowly, careful not to break the spiral. You share slices with no one present but the gulls. You whisper 3 names and a 4th that was only almost a name. The breeze takes the citrus and the syllables and files them under weather. You feel taller and smaller at once, a combination the sea invented and the land can learn. When sleep finds you, that night it brings a dream without thunder. You are on a deck that is not moving, surrounded by hands that know exactly what to do. There is nothing to fix. There is also everything to tend. Friendships, promises, the long grain of days. You wake with the kind of quiet that does not need proof. You put water on for tea and set out a second cup just in case the morning brings a guest you didn't know you needed. It often does, so this is the ending. Not the slam of a door, but the soft closing of a logbook. The ink still wet enough to smudge if you aren't careful. You place it on a shelf where the sun will find it sometimes. You hang a length of old line by the door, a superstition that is also a memory that is also a tool. You live. You practice the same stubborn art you learned out there. Show up, tie what needs tying. Share when you can, rest when you must. Stand the watch that is yours and yield the watch that is not. And when the wind turns strange and the town goes quiet and someone needs a steady voice, you will step forward without swagger. You will say what the sea taught you to say. Read the sky, mind the line, trust the hands, guard the heart. People will think it is poetry. It is instructions. It will be enough.